Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Christensen, a licensed prayer practitioner at Light on the Mountains. And it is now time to take a deep breath and let go of all the chaos that got you here, and let's go within. I know that there is one universal spirit, one infinite intelligence, one divine presence, one creative force. That force, that presence, that intelligence, that spirit is all there is, but it is within everything in the universe, and it was in each one of us here in this room. And it is very, very special because it is love and joy and beauty. It is peace and harmony, order and balance, goodness, wisdom, intelligence, infinite abundance, and perfect health. And I know that that is now a part of each and every one of us. And I give thanks for that. I give thanks for this wonderful philosophy. I give thanks for Light on the Mountains and everyone that makes it possible. For Donna, who's already done some work in the kitchen, I know, and for Nancy and Bob, who are greeting today, and who also do other things, and for the Leadership Council, my fellow practitioners, and our magnificent musicians, and for Reverend John and his always perfect messages. And together we say, and so it is. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a sinus infection, and it seems to settle in the wrong places at the wrong time. So the reading this morning is from the February Science of Mind magazine, which has lots of good stuff in it. And I am reading from something a woman named Swati Singh, and she does a lot of this kind of writing and is amazing. And this is called From Wonderment to Self-Realization, 3 Ways to Create a Sense of Wonder and Follow Your Right Path. And she says, what does nothing look like? No planets, no galaxies, just nothing, not even black. A 12-year-old me asked my grandma this question. Grandma smiled and said, I don't know, but you should never stop searching for that. 2 decades later, I realized that my tiny spark of curiosity about finding nothingness manifested into a lifelong spiritual journey. Albert Einstein said, one cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery every day. Never lose a holy curiosity. Nurturing curiosity makes us open to new experiences and sharpens our minds and our potential. It is the fuel behind scientific discoveries and innovations. Creative thought, too, stems from being curious about every aspect of life. This same wonderment can help us in our spiritual journey as well. There are 3 aspects to this sense of wonder that guide us to the right path. Here's number 1, the right direction. Curiosity serves the larger good of our own self. Our energies need to focus less on judging and more on finding wonderment in life's little things, the synchronicities, the working of the universe, the magic of gratefulness, the lesson of contentment, the gift of introspection. Existentialism will cease to become a burden, but a door to go deeper within when we choose the right path. Number 2, the light self. On the path of wonderment, we may find several different answers to our questions. While this might appear confusing at first, the haze lifts when we realize that the act of wonder simply implies, I don't know, in quotes. allowing our mind to be free of any biases toward the answers that may follow. There should be no weight of ego that lives in the illusion of knowing everything. The aim is not to be the most intellectual person or the one who has all the answers. The goal is to reintroduce that sense of wonderment you had as a child. Drop the conditioning, the beliefs, and all you have known. When a 3-year-old asks, "Why is the tree green?" we cannot satisfy that curiosity with an explanation of the chlorophyll pigment and color reflection theory, can we? With knowledge, our ability to be amazed shouldn't die away. The unknowable, the unanswerable things evoke wonder. Don't be in a hurry to reach the answers. Let there be no answers. Let there be just wonderment. And here's number 3, the nature way. A sense of wonderment requires attention to the nature of all around you, to the nature all around you. How would wonder develop if there is no time to pause and reflect? How would green trees evoke joy if chlorophyll closed your mind? Allow life to pass by in mindful moments instead of rushing like a speeding train, watching everything disappear in a flash. Let life's little things overwhelm you. The leaves falling in autumn, the pebble making ripples in the water, the birds singing in the spring, the bees falling asleep inside the flower, the patterns of the stars, the phases of the moon. All of these things can spark wonder if you allow yourself to witness the moment fully without any distractions and merge with it. Introspection of our own behavior, acts, intentions, and purpose in life creates self-realization. That journey requires us to knock on the doors of the inner world. It can happen when our holy curiosity sharpens our senses enough to experience the awe of this miraculous life. May we find hidden wonders every day. And then at the bottom she says, reconnect with a sense of curiosity and wonder you had as a child, seeing everything as novel and exciting. And now it is time for us to read the affirmation for February, which is in red on our insert. And let's read it together, please. My thought is creative. I envision a life where the power and presence of spirit manifests through everything I experience. Now, time for wonderful music.
Thanks, Ann. Good morning, everyone. A thought of the day. So thanks to David and Allie for being here last week as I was away. But I got to join you all, as all of you are this morning. I was sitting in my camper in Texas with the windows open. I know, I just had to brag for a minute. Cool breeze blowing in, and I got to sit and be a part of the service via the internet, and that was delightful. It was delightful to be a part of the gathering from a different perspective. And you're right, you see the backs of people's heads. David mentioned that last week. So here's my thought. I said to someone this week, you know, I like being in Texas. I like who I am when I'm in Texas. And that led them to go, "What, don't you like who you are when you're here?" And I was like, no, I think I do, most often. Most often. And I'm aware that all of us, in all of our different parts of our lives, our time with our family, our time with our friends, our time at work, our times out alone on a trail somewhere, our times driving back and forth to wherever we're going, that we bring different parts of who we are forward. Different parts of us take the first position. We are diverse. We are complex. We are complicated. We have many facets. And what I realize is, for me, there are times when all of those parts line up well. when the part of me that is in first position and the part of me that is in last position play on the same team well. And in those moments, I find myself to feel and be the most authentic me that I know how to be. And there are other times when those different parts of me bump into each other a little bit. How should I react to this? What should I say in this situation? What should I wear today? Here, the big question is, do I need to put on a tie? The answer is always no, but you still ask that question. It made me in these thoughts about creativity and about expression, because indeed, isn't that what creativity is really about? It's allowing yourself to express. It's allowing yourself to communicate, to share. And so I had this lovely conversation yesterday with a student about the importance of integrity, the importance of authenticity when sharing. That it is difficult to be at your creative best, at your most open, when you aren't feeling authentic, when you're feeling like you are wearing someone else's clothes. And I've been lucky my entire life that most of my outfits have fit me well. But there are times when I realize that if I had my choice, I would take off one shirt and put on another. What it's leading me to is this question about about whether my choices, whether my need to wear one hat or another, are really based on anyone else and anyone else's expectations, or they're simply based on me. Is it my choice? Do I feel an obligation to fill someone else's expectation of who I am? And am I willing, more often than not, to find that balance between honoring the need of the moment and honoring me? Alyssa, Max, R.L. in the same room at the same time.
The whole gang is back.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone at home. It's good to see you all. This big President's Week, it's kind of like the last big push. Stay out of town this week. There's people everywhere.
All with kids.
Yes.
Oh, no. Kids here.
Yeah, so stay down south. So let's talk a little about President's Day. I just feel like I want to talk a little bit about President Jimmy Carter. Yeah. I don't know how much news you all watch or keep up with. He is in hospice care right now, and I believe he's 98 years old. And as I think most of us know, hospice care means you're going from trying to cure or make better to simply make someone to be the most comfortable they can for them to slip away. And it's a lovely thought. I think go back a few decades, we couldn't even imagine just quote unquote giving up. And we're all going to get there at some point, but just to graciously let someone go. And of course, already little news things, I hear people of all ilks debating his presidency. Was it effective? Was it not effective? And at this point, I leave that to historians to figure out. But one thing that I did hear someone say a few years ago, and I agree with this, said that he has the most successful post-presidency in modern history. And if you really think about that, of what do we want from our leaders? Yes, we want what we believe are effective programs and laws and all that sort of thing, but I kind of think we want them to stand in a certain amount of integrity, don't we? And as I, of course, as all of you follow his post-presidency history, I'm in awe of him. I'm in awe of how he approaches his own faith. I don't identify as a Christian, but when I look for me to be a Christian, it means that you are truly unconditionally non-judgmental and unconditionally loving. And boy, I think he feels that. In fact, so many times over the years that he'll be asked even about a social issue or whatever, and he always goes to unconditional non-judgment. And I'm just in awe of that. And I think, boy, what a way to be effective in your life. In a sense, he still has the bully pulpit, as they call it. People will listen because he is a former president, or again, whether you thought he was effective or not, that you will get a little bit of airtime. And, of course, he's really well known for almost the last 30 years being part of Habitat for Humanity. And I read an interesting little snippet from an interview of him yesterday. And it said that often that as they are building a home for someone, for a family, that the family is right there pounding nails alongside them. And he said that it's not just about building a home, it's about building a relationship and building a life for someone. And I just thought that was so amazing. And when you see pictures of him, little snapshots of he and his wife, Rosalind, doing volunteering for that, it's not uncommon to see a picture of him with a big blue welt on his face that he had apparently on volunteering one day, fell and hurt himself, and the next day he was back pounding nails. That, I mean, yeah, it didn't look pretty, but he was okay enough to come back on, and I'm sure a lot of us would say, let's take a couple days rest. So it gives me not only hope, but it gives me inspiration on those moments, just like, I'd just rather stay home today. He's there pounding nails. So again, regardless of what your political beliefs are around him and his presidency, I would like to think we could all agree that he gave us and continues to give us an amazing example of how to be a human. So that's my highlight for President's Week. Think of him. Be like Jimmy Carter in that respect. But it kind of segues into part of what I wanted to talk about as we are looking at creativity. And creativity is really a two-sided coin. It is both process and it is also realization or the idea of what it is that you're going to do. And if we look at, let's go back to our Habitat and Humanity, the process is let's all put on a tool belt and get some nails and hammer. That's the process. But the realization or the idea that if we go back decades of the inception was building relationships and building lives. I mean, can you see the difference there? So it starts with a realization or an idea of a core idea, like build relationships and build lives, and then as human beings, we start to get inspired of what that process is. I have no idea that as people way back started to have an idea of building, that if building homes was the first thing that came to their mind. I would imagine, like for all of us, as the process starts to evolve, that the idea evolves, that we might start taking some steps and realize that, well, maybe we're not going in the perfect path yet. Let's readjust, go back to the realization, go back to the idea and see where that leads us. And I like to think we do that here as we go into a process. Okay, what's the core idea here? That's where we always need to go. And I think, of course, it has to be perfectly balanced. And I think sometimes, or often as human beings in the physical world, we trip over the process. Of course, we want something to happen. We want it to happen quickly. We just want it to be, don't we? We might even start to have a little realization, and before we even think it through, we're in our car like, let's go do it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work out so well. And as I'm looking at our world today and what we're experiencing as our process or journey, I think a lot of us are saying, why aren't we there yet? What's with this process? Why can't we get there? I thought, well, whatever there is. It seems like we should have been much further down this journey. It seems like people are not misbehaving less, they're misbehaving more. Like, what is it? It's that whole thing of the child in the backseat of the road trip, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And it's just like, oh, we can get so weary from the journey. But the journey it's like quicksand, and it's not that we're sinking, but it's always shape-shifting. It's always changing course, and again, it always calls us back to, okay, what's the realization, or what is the idea? And sometimes when you think you're just kind of there, you made it, it's in view, again, it can seem like the floor falls out from us. So as I was thinking of this week, there's a little joke I've had with different people over the last few weeks, and I really mean this as a joke. I said, 2019 would have been a good point for me to get why the getting was good. It really would. It just felt like we are at this great peak as a spiritual community. And what I think really exemplified that, and some of you will remember this, so in September of 2019, we had our annual stewardship program. And of course, our stewardship program, on one hand, we look at our finances, we look at each of us decide what we are going to donate throughout the year. And we come together in what we call a kickoff event. And it, more than anything, is a celebration of, yeah, we did it another year. What are we going to do the next year? And as some of you remember, 2019 was at R.L.'s backyard. And it was amazing, not just because R.L. is a gracious host, but it just seemed like we had reached a peak. I don't know if for those who were there. It really did. And if you can go into your mind's eye, go in the Wayback Machine or something, whatever it is. I mean, there were people present who are not present now. Some have made their passing, and I can see them, at the hors d'oeuvre table, and they have gone to whatever the next thing is. We've had people that have just unexpectedly moved to other communities in the world these last few years. Their journey took a complete jag to the right or left that they didn't expect. And there was just this excitement of that we had really come to something. At least it was for me. And boy, we went so far beyond our financial goal that year in our stewardship program. It was almost shocking. And then March of 2020 happened. And we don't need to reiterate. We all know what it is. But the whole idea is that you think you're on the journey. Are we there yet? And there was a sense for me like, yeah, we kind of got there. We're doing it. It's not that we're going to stay, stationary or not move forward or expand. But there was a sense, at least for me in our community, that at that time, if circumstances arose that I had to leave the community, I knew that it was such a strong community that it would just continue to be amazing. But then things happened. And so I believe we have, these last few years, have been on a different kind of journey and a reset, talked about a lot. And we've been, what I've talked about in my blog, really at a point of exploration. What works now? That's a big question, isn't it? What works now? And I think, again, as we turn on the TV, we see a lot of things that don't appear to be working well now. And as we are exploring different ideas and ways of doing things and realizing that there are some things, of course, that we need to bless along its way. For us, that amazing picture of us having an amazing time at R.L.'s house in September of 2019, in a sense, we almost have to let it bless it on its way. It's like you can't hold on to it because we are evolving a little bit differently. It's like I said, sometimes your greatest blessing is something you have to bless along its way. We don't fully understand that. It's like, no, we need to hold on. We need to go back. We need to, and we're just in another version of what, the hero's journey where something happened that was unexpected, and here we are on the road again. Where are we going? What are we doing? How are we going to do it? And this is a global thing. But as we are searching, or should I say, researching and experimenting and exploring, we come face to face with practice, our spiritual practice, our practice of what we do in a day-to-day human being. How does our life look? What are the actual steps in our process now? and that we're trying to figure that out yet again. So let's look at practice a bit. Sometimes there's nothing more intimidating than to talk about spiritual practice. People are so frustrated with it. Everyone has one, whether you realize it or not. And first of all, I think we have to get over the fear of what we think it is. I remember several years ago, there was like the first couple of years I was here, there's this little group that wanted to meet for a meditation thing, so would you come with us for a while? I said, sure. And they were really insistent that I sit on a mat on a hard floor in a lotus position with my back straight. And I thought, is meditation supposed to hurt? And I thought, is there something like not being able to move for once I do this that it's going to make it better? And then I had this realization, I could sit in a chair and it would work and it would be just as amazing. And if someone in that position finds great success, that's good for them too. But I think we have that a little prejudice in our mind, what someone has told it that it has to be. And it doesn't have to be. In fact, you don't have to have consciously even a spiritual or religious belief to have a spiritual practice. So if you, as you were sitting here today waiting for things to happen, looked out the window and recognized how beautiful it was, and on some form you said something like, what if? That was spiritual practice. That was opening you up to an idea of a realization of something that could be. It's sneaky spiritual practice. You know, we make too much of it. What candles do I burn? Do I have crystals? Do I throw sand over my shoulder? Am I sitting in an uncomfortable position? I mean, but yet again, spontaneously, we do this a million times a day. You stop and you are fully present and you, on some level, say, what if? That is the strongest spiritual practice that you can do. But as we look at spiritual practice and how to be more conscious of it, actually has three components. What we call meditation, prayer, and study. It's funny how a lot of times we don't make time for study. Of course, it sounds too studious, doesn't it? But here's the one thing that I have found over the years here. For one thing, Ernest Holmes, when he started this movement of Science and Mind, at first it wasn't meant to be a faith community, it was meant to be a school. A school where people would come together and talk about their similarities in their spiritual beliefs as opposed to their differences. That's pretty significant for the 1920s and 30s. Talk about our similarities instead of our differences. Many people will tell me as they take a class here or anywhere else that they reach kind of a peak experience, that they're doing the study, and that just things are happening and that their journey is accelerating. And they said class 10 or whatever the last class is comes and goes, and they feel like they're falling off the cliff, that the movement stopped going forward. Well, they stopped doing what they were doing before. We stopped doing a systematic search and study. And study can be as simple as getting the Science of Mind magazine and reading the 3-minute little reading and contemplating it for 5 minutes. But then we look at meditation and prayer, we still get stuck on this idea that it has to be, that we have to have a definite result in mind. That what takes us to prayer is often something that in our mind is bad that happened, and we need to find a solution. And we need a cure, we need a healing of some sort of thing. But actually, as study starts to stimulate ideas, meditation, as again looking out the window and saying what if, is the most powerful thing that we can do in spiritual practice. That's where we get the realization portion. Again, the realization of Habitat for Humanity is build a life and build a relationships. That's where you start to get that core idea. And then, in a sense, we are with that core idea. And even as we are in this world that we're thinking, what is my path? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And to start to get clarity on those core ideas. And prayer for us in Science of Mind is not wishing for something or trying to make something happen. It is actually raising your consciousness around your core idea. So again, Habitat for Humanity, to just live with the idea of building relationships and building lives, and see where that will take you, or where it could take you. That especially in this world now, we are looking for solutions, aren't we? We want things to be better, whatever better is that we translate it to be. But the larger idea that we can do, and I think taking someone's example like President Carter, say what is the larger idea of your life? What is the larger idea of our country right now that we would like to embody? What is that larger idea, even though we get kind of caught in the weeds here a little bit of they're wrong, they're misbehaving, all this thing is sort of happening, and that the road that we are on now really calls for that level of realization and bringing the big idea into existence. That is the thing I think can be missing at some times. We're so disillusioned with the journey, like we're not there yet. How did this happen? Where are we going? I don't know where I'm going. Life is weird all of a sudden, but it's calling us to get to that larger idea. And that is really at the core of creativity. You can't help but create consciously if you're really sure on that core idea. But it's so funny with what we think should be at the end of the journey. So you're here, you come to Light Mountains occasionally, you stay at home at the bathrobe crowd, and get inspired by the music and all that, and you think, well, just think in your mind, do you think should be at the end of this journey? I mean, you don't need to share with friends or tell me, just what do you think what it is? As I talk to people, often it's not something in the physical world. You say, well, I hear this thing called about oneness and being connected to the divine, and isn't that at the end of the journey? Isn't that when the clouds open up and I have enlightenment or awakening or whatever that sort of thing is that will help me rise out of this sometimes icky experience that we're having down here? I don't think so. Maybe there is the essence of that. So I had a teacher in the School of Ministry, and I've referred to him a couple times over the year. And he taught me how that hope, dream idea is part of who we are, but maybe not the end of the journey for what we came down here for. Because it's so interesting how you may see someone who you think is just spiritually so enlightened, and you know, how did they get there? And then you get deflated like, God, I'll never get there. You know? So this guy in the School of Ministry, and this was the late 90s, he was an American, he used to be a Buddhist monk. And he was part of the Dalai Lama's entourage. Actually, I think he did some translation. And so, spent a lot of time living with Dalai in India. And when they weren't traveling, he was doing things that you would expect a monk to do. He actually spent time in spiritual practice, in caves, seeking samadhi, which is basically, for those who have no idea what that is, it is a sense where you elevate and expand from your physical body and you truly experience the oneness with all that there is. I mean, really. Like, we talk about it, we might have like a little flash of it, but in those caves with, I don't know how they teach them to do this, you actually do it. It's like not a concept. It's like, and he says it's almost addictive a little bit, because it's like there's this amazing universe we're a part of, and we are kind of like collapse ourselves into this more limited experience here. And he says it's very tempting to just be there. But he said that at a certain point, he realized a few things. One, that is our actual eternal existence, and there is a part of us there at all times. So you don't have to go there. You're always there. Right now, like some of these mornings, you can't even imagine it because we're doing what we do. but we're always there. So his next thing was like, well, if we're always there, why did I come here? I mean, isn't that the question? Okay, we're spiritual full beings, and like, why am I doing here watching CNN getting upset? I mean, like, okay, eternal one with everything, throwing shoes at the TV set because I'm upset, because of what I'm hearing. And so, for his path at least, he thought, okay, I'm always there, but there must be a reason why I came here that wants me to participate on the ground level a little bit more. So what I found so interesting about him, so this is the late 90s, he was about my age at that time, so early 40s at that time. Kind of a tall, really nice looking guy who was kind of scruffy. And you know, some of those people, I don't know how they pull this off, where their hair is always a little messy, but they always look great. One of those kind of guys. And he said that once he left the monkhood, is that what you call it? The monastery, he got fascinated by motorcycles. As well, got married and bought a motorcycle. And so, imagine this guy's kind of scruffy, tall, nice looking, that hair that just blows in the breeze on his motorcycle, a little scruffy. And as people see him go down the road, little did they know, a few years before, he was wearing a saffron robe with a shaved head, hanging out in caves. I mean, isn't that interesting? I just found that so compelling. But yet I know that the heart of what he did before was with him on his journey. In fact, he wrote a couple books about Buddhism that we were using in class. And that was always there as a constant, in a sense, the realization or seed idea of who he was, but yet he was letting it unfold in a process that was just feeling like more what he needed to do in this lifetime. So the big samadhi thing is amazing, it's wonderful. I don't know, I've not been there. Maybe it's not the goal after all. Maybe the larger goal is to pound some nails to build someone's house. Maybe we just show up with a more open heart in whatever it is that we're doing. That we have this realization of who we are as spiritual beings, and for some odd reason we chose to come here with it. And we chose to create with it as well. And I think part of our journey is to learn to kind of what things do we let go along the way. And again, it's the balance of process, the journey, and the realization and the idea. I just want to close with this one thing that in our class we're reading Emma Curtis Hopkins. Do you like her a little bit more? She seemed, we've been reading a couple other people that were 19th century authors who wrote like they were 19th century authors. Well, you read a sentence and you go, okay. Or like I said, I think a couple weeks ago, didn't they have punctuation in those days? Talk about run-on sentences. But anyways, Ann Christensen kind of writes a little bit more like we do. And she was a great influence on Ernest Holmes, and she's quite a character, which I won't go into. But she has this analogy here talking about a musician, that there is, of course, the practice, and there's a seed idea of what's compelling you to be a musician. So she writes, the musician thinks he is skilled at the piano because he practices hard. Not so. It is because he has, in some moment, covenanted with the spiritual feeling or idea that stirred him. And it has come forth so far as to lead him to be willing to practice to give it more freedom. It is certain that if he really knew that it was the Holy Spirit expressing through itself through him, he would see that it is not his practice, but his free mind that enables him to be a good musician. It's practice and it's the idea. So let's take this within. And first, let us know with all our being, the presence of love resides within President Carter and his family. We see him as a perfect being. We know that he departs on his journey at the perfect right moment for him. That he is, of course, not only greeted by love, but let go with love. And we allow his example to inspire us all. It's not a commentary on his politics. We just allow ourselves to up our game, to be more compassionate, to be more loving, and to be more accepting. And we allow that to be part of our larger idea of who we are as human beings. We allow our journeys to unfold in their unique and sometimes frustrating ways, and knowing that in some ways we're already where we need to be. We just accept it, we embrace it, we allow it to embrace us, and we allow the absolute perfection of spirit to be known through who we are in everything we do. So we give thanks for this, and we simply let it go. We release our attachment to it and let it be. And so it is.